Welcome to another edition of MissTrial. It's a top podcast in all different platforms. I'm so thrilled to be here with my co-anchors, Danya Perry and Kathleen Rice. We have a special guest today, the Palm Beach State Attorney, David Aronberg, who's also, you might know him on the MeidasTouch network because he has his own show on the YouTube channel called True Crime MeidasTouch Network, or True Crime MTN. And so, David, we are so thrilled to have you on this show to talk about all things true crime, law, politics, et cetera, all the things that we like to talk about here on MissTrial. And we thought with so much going on, first of all, in the world of politics, down in your neck of the woods, Mar-a-Lago with Judge Cannon and Trump and the immunity decision. And we just thought how great it would be to have you on the show to discuss whatever you want to talk about. But I know what we want to talk about. We want to talk about this trial going on in New Mexico with Alec Baldwin, and poor Halyna Hutchins was shot to death on the set of a movie, Rust. And we thought that would be great to talk to you about it, get your thoughts on it, since they opened today. We're opening statements and witnesses have already started testifying. And a couple other cases we wanted to talk about. One in particular involved Karen Reed, who was recently had a hung jury. She's a woman who was accused of murdering, drunk driving and murdering her Boston PD boyfriend. And the jury hung, but multiple jurors have come forward and said, we acquitted on several of the charges. And so what happens next? What does the judge do? We should talk about that and the trickiness of that case. And those are the things I wanted to talk about. How about you guys, Danya and Kathleen? What are your thoughts today?
Well, I love that. And it's obviously perfectly on point with a niche of Dave's. Just want to say a little fun fact. Dave and I actually go back, what is it now, 30 years to our freshman year of college. So we'll see how much we get into today. But
Penny Packer Hall.
By the way, I'm changing what I want to talk about. I want to hear all about the college stories.
I was kind of a nerd, so I probably have some better ones. Dave was a man about town and campus. He was you were the president, the undergraduate president. So
yeah, but
politician, just born and bred, right?
If Danya Perry was a nerd in college and I was a super nerd, because Danya was one of the cool kids around, and we lived in Penny Packer dorm, and it's great to see how successful you guys have all become, and this podcast too, doing so well. So it's an honor to be on MissTrial, because when I'm on, it's MissTrial, right?
We're
yes.
Exactly.
So let's talk about those first, and then let's get into some local politics for Dave, or local legal issues down in Florida, because it's such a jungle down there. And so there's always stuff we could talk about. But Dave, where do you want to start? Or Kathleen, did you have any other?
No, Donna, exactly what you were talking about. Dave, as you know, here in New York, things are getting kind of crazy here. And for Democrats, certainly, if they want to take the House back, that road is going to go straight through New York. And they're getting some pretty bad numbers back on the Biden campaign. So I just wanted to ask a couple of political questions for Dave at some point.
All right. So how about dealer's choice? Dave, where do you want to start?
Yeah. Let's start with the politics, because I do so much true crime and legal analysis. My background is in the political world. I was a state senator for 8 years, and I would love to talk about it because I know it's on everyone's minds.
So Dave, here's my question. I mean, well, first of all, I'm sure you watched the debate. We are almost 2 weeks from that time. And, I can't really call the Democrats who have come out against the president staying in the race a cascade, but it's certainly, enough that he should seriously be considering it. And from what I hear and from what I understand, he's being quite defiant in staying in. Look, the way I always looked at President Biden was that I took him at his word that he was going to be a transitional president. And he was the right man in 2020. But I think maybe he might not be the right one in 2024. What say you?
Yeah, I've been a big supporter of President Biden. I think he's been a very good president. And my motivation here is to make sure that Donald Trump's not back in the White House, that we have a Democratic administration, and for the sake of the Supreme Court and the rule of law. But I'm looking at the same numbers you are, and the numbers are terrible. Facts are facts. And to say that, well, don't believe the polls, that's not a good enough response.
Yeah.
The polls, every poll cannot be wrong, and the polls are showing that what should be at least an even race is no longer even, and Trump is ahead in all the swing states, and it puts, with Biden's difficulties, it puts the House and the Senate at great risk. So we could lose the entire legislative branch as well as the White House unless something happens. Now, two things could happen. Biden can rebound and be the Biden of 2020 again, or we could find someone else at the top of the ticket. It probably would be Kamala Harris. I just don't know at this stage if President Biden is able to rebound. You know, Charles Barkley once said that Father Time is undefeated. And I just don't see that all of a sudden you're going to snap back and be the Joe Biden of 2020, or even the Joe Biden of 2022, or even the Joe Biden of 11 weeks ago when he did the Howard Stern interview, which was so compelling. So I worry about that. And I know that the base is up in arms. They don't want to see Biden back out, but I just want to win. And I'm looking at really bad numbers, and I'm looking at the people in swing seats being the ones most likely to come out and say, I can't be part of this. I'm going to divorce myself from the top of the ticket. So I think that the answer here is either Joe Biden has to prove that he can bounce back by doing press conferences and by doing interviews that are live with perhaps some skeptical reporters, where you can show that one night on the debate was an aberration. Or I think we're going to have to move on to someone else who can take the age issue off the table.
Yeah, Dave, as you're talking, I'm thinking to myself, there's no way you can unring the age bell, like you said. There's just no way. And now they're throwing in all these things about a specific doctor, a Parkinson's doctor that was visiting the White House. But putting all of that aside, if I were someone like Bob Casey, the senator from Pennsylvania, or Jackie Rosen, the senator from Nevada, Tammy Baldwin, senator from Wisconsin, I would be worried. All of those three Democratic senators are actually running ahead of Biden.
Right.
And that's not good. And if you look at what he won New York State by in 2020, 23 points. He beat the homeboy. Granted, it was a hometown boy. Granted, it's New York, a blue state, but he still won by 23 points. And it's not looking good here. And we are desperately trying to get back the 5 seats we lost in 2022, which handed the majority over to the Republicans in the House. So, I mean, it would be a mess if he stepped aside, and actually the rules don't even allow him to hand it directly over to Kamala Harris, right? I mean, we would have to go through some kind of a, very quick campaign or brokered convention, right?
Well, what happens to the states that already have already decided that he's going to be the Democratic nominee?
Well, all that means is that he gets those delegates. They are not required, but are expected to, vote for Biden. And that's what you go through, that long process where they all stand up and they say, yeah, I'm for Biden, I'm for Biden, I'm for Biden. He can release them and then allow anyone who wants to get in the race to get in and start to try to make the case to those individuals' electors. Altogether, I think there's just over 4,000 electors, 700 of them being super delegates, which are people that are just picked by party leaders, which I don't think is a really good thing to end up with someone who, a president and vice president who are chosen by party leaders. I mean, Dave, you've been through this. You've had your name on a ballot. I mean, you want the people to decide, right?
Yeah, I've been on the ballot 7 times. And yes, I understand that the public is not going to just want a coronation. The options are getting more limited as time goes on. Now, Kamala Harris would be able to inherit all the money that Biden has raised. She's part of the ticket, so it'd be the easiest transition. But I think it's fair to say that the Democratic base needs to know that there was never a coronation, that perhaps others were considered, and perhaps there should be some sort of mini primary. But, time is working against us. And at some point, it may just be the only option to go with Kamala Harris. And although I recognize that she may not be the strongest person when it comes to the polls, then money does inure to her benefit. It would go right to her. And if she were the nominee, then the issue of age is off the table. And instead, the Democrats can talk about Roe versus Wade again. And
well, I was just going to ask you about that, Dave, because Florida, I mean, if you want to just, if you can just remind people, listeners, exactly what the state of the law is in Florida when it comes to women's choice, because in my mind, 2024 should be like 2018 when women came out in droves and handed the House, this is after Trump won in 2016, and Democrats got the House back in 2018 because of how bad, Trump was on the whole issue of women's health.
Yeah. Florida, through Ron DeSantis, because he was running for president, passed one of the most draconian abortion laws in the country, a 6-week abortion ban, which only 25% of Floridians support. I mean, can you imagine that? I mean, 75% of Floridians were opposed to this, and yet it is the law in Florida. And now we have on the ballot, because we got enough signatures, a referendum to put abortion on the ballot, to bring it back to where it was before the 6-week and 15-week ban, to bring it back where it was before Roe versus Wade was overturned. And if Donald Trump says what he says, that it should go back to the states, well, then here is the state of Florida rallying to pass this referendum. But at the same time, when you say let's take it back to the states, that means you're endorsing other states that have more draconian bans, that have absolute bans, or are trying to criminalize women who travel across state lines, which I think is totally unconstitutional. So this whole thing, let's leave it to the states, is great, except if you live in a state that decides that women should have no reproductive rights.
Well, why would somebody, though, what I don't understand, though, is, like, say you're a Democrat, you believe in mostly all the things that Democrats believe in. You're one of those people who are, you lean left, right? You're not 100%. No matter what, you're kind of, I typically lean left. Like, say you're one of those people who was going to who voted for Biden before. I don't understand. Okay, yeah, he's older. There's questions about his mental acuity, but how does that translate to, okay, so therefore I will vote for Trump, who's a convicted criminal, who has multiple, the guy is a liar, a rapist, he's been held in contempt. I mean, he's all the things, right? How does that translate to him? Okay, but he's more qualified, right? That guy's more qualified. He's going to be a dictator on day one. Why wouldn't those people still vote? Okay, yeah, Biden's not my 100% number one, but he's better than the alternative. I just don't get it.
If this election is about Trump, the Democrats are going to win. But when you have the question in November being about Biden's age and his mental capabilities, then we're going to lose. So that's why a lot of us are saying, well, then we shouldn't make it about Biden's age. Let's make it about Trump again by putting someone else on the ballot, or let's put at ease everyone's concerns about age and mental health by going out there and doing all these interviews, which President Biden is not doing. So the key is to put the onus back on Trump, because when Trump supporters say this last election in 2020 was stolen because Biden had smaller crowds, there's no way 81 million people voted for Biden. Well, you know what? Maybe you're right that there wasn't a ton of enthusiasm for Biden, but this was a referendum about Trump in 2020, and most people said no to him. That's what you have to do again in 2024.
That is the concern right now, is that, when I saw the debate, like, I think most people, I thought it was a complete debacle, but I also, had there was room for some grace, because he's had bad nights, he's had good nights. I did want him to come out there and provide some kind of assurance. And the Morning Joe call-in didn't do that. The few teleprompter campaign events haven't done that. And so I do think, exactly to your point, Dave, that right now the conversation is about Joe Biden and his age. And it's not about all the other stuff that you said, Karen, about Trump. And I think, look, I haven't even really seen that much advertising. I haven't really seen that much campaigning from Trump and the Republicans on this. I think they're letting it go a little bit. But I think as we get into the convention, the Republican convention is going to be brutal. And that's what I'm really concerned about. And there's no counterpunch. So Yeah, I don't say, like you said, Kathleen, like Father Time, only marches in one direction. I think actually Biden had a line in Morning Joe, in response to what happened. He's like, well, I've had, many, many appearances, and this was just one. Time marches in a certain way, aging only goes in one direction. So it's that was not overly reassuring. So
when is it too late? When is it too late? Like when does he have to decide by before it's like it's just too late?
Well, the date, right? I mean, Dave, I would say Ohio is kind of a little bit of a problem because they have to print their ballots by August 7th, I believe, unless they want to have an issue there, right?
Right. Although, quite frankly, Kathleen, Ohio is not in play in this election.
No, it's not. That's true. But
So
I just don't think you can afford to give away anything at this point.
Yeah, the sooner the better. Definitely the last possible day is the Democratic convention. You could do it up till then, but you want to establish someone as a nominee and go out there and get all the enthusiasm together, or at least start a primary system where we can all come together and pick someone and have that person define the next few months as a referendum on women's reproductive rights and on whether the rule of law should exist and whether we should be Putin's friend or enemy, whether we should support Ukraine or Russia. These are kind of things that should be on the ballot. But as long as Biden is out there and we're still talking about his age, that is a loser for us. We're going to lose up and down the ticket. It's a terrible situation. And as we said, the only way we can change it is if Biden then goes out on the road and does interviews and spontaneous things without a teleprompter. But he's not doing that. Or you have to find someone else.
He's only not doing that, but, Kathleen, earlier you said there's not yet a cascade, but you are hearing from people who know him well, who are coming out often anonymously, but George Clooney just had an op-ed today. And you could say, okay, he's a Hollywood guy. He's someone who's known Biden for a long time, personally and in a close-up way. And he's saying this is not the Biden of 2020 or even of, a couple of years ago. And so that's the stuff that does start to give some concern that it may be hard to come back.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, that's where a lot of the money comes from. People in California, right, that are supporting Biden financially. And what I think is so ironic, though, about this is, Joe Biden is 2024 is not the Joe Biden of 2020, but Donald Trump is like a worse version of the Donald Trump in 2020, just in terms of what he plans to do from day one. But if you listen to, people don't really pay attention to his rallies anymore because he just keeps saying crazy things. But if you actually listen to them, he actually goes through moments where he sounds like he does not know what he's talking about. So Father Time has not been very kind to him either.
But so why then did he get away with it? I just don't.
I think because it's, Biden's older and, and he's the incumbent. I mean, let's be honest.
And he flopped on the biggest stage of them all. It's one thing for Biden to have 60 odd appearances that went well. You flop in the Super Bowl and everyone's going to see it.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, that's true. That's really true. All right, let's pivot to our next topic. David, talk to us about Alec Baldwin and that trial. What's going on there?
It was tough for me as a prosecutor to get my head around charging an actor for the first time, as far as I know, for an accident on the set when the professionals, the armorer, the first assistant director, represented to that actor that the gun was cold, was not full of live ammunition. I mean, unless you want to set a precedent in the future that says that an actor has to check the gun and make sure that the professionals are doing their jobs properly before using it, then I think it's going to be an uphill climb for prosecutors. Now, on the other hand, if you can put on a case, and I think this is the key for prosecutors, that Alec Baldwin indeed pressed the trigger, then number one, it makes him look like a liar because he has said in multiple interviews he did not press the trigger. And number two, it does put into issue the fact that, well, yeah, an actor should not have to be responsible for double checking a gun. But at the same time, anyone who has a gun should not be pointing it and pulling the trigger at someone in front of them. If you do that, that risk is on you if something bad happens. So that I think is the best case for the prosecution to show that he lied, that he did pull the trigger. Use your experts however possible, and that way you can even overcome this new precedent. That are we really going to make actors liable for listening to their assistants? So
Well,
I think that's the crux of the case.
Let's talk about what he's charged with. Okay, he's charged with involuntary manslaughter, and it's defined in New Mexico as involuntary manslaughter consists of manslaughter committed in the commission of an unlawful act not amounting to felony, or in the commission of a lawful act. Okay, which I guess this was. It was a lawful act, which might produce death in an unlawful manner, or without due caution and circumspection. And that was the part that I thought was interesting, because basically what they're saying is he wasn't being careful. And the prosecution theory was that he was not just an actor, but he was also a producer, and he was cutting corners left and right. There were so many discussions about how they didn't want to spend the money. There was all sorts of wild things going on set. People were shooting things on set, and he was cutting corners, including this armorer who had little experience. And so the problem, though, is the judge gutted that theory and said you can't talk about Alec Baldwin as a producer, just as an actor. So I think I agree with you. This is an uphill battle.
Yeah, a prosecutor is going to have to get a unanimous jury beyond a reasonable doubt to believe that Alec Baldwin was so reckless in possessing the gun, pointing it, and pulling the trigger. Now, Alec Baldwin, I think, will take the stand because he's an actor. He's used to trying to get people to believe what he says and having people empathize with him. So they're going to want him to take the stand, and I think he will. And I think
that could hurt him.
It could, but I think when they confront him with the fact that he must have pulled the trigger, because the FBI is going to say, the experts say that gun doesn't go off unless you pull the trigger. But I think what Alec Baldwin could say is, I didn't intend to pull the trigger. I didn't think I did, but it is perhaps as possible that involuntarily, when I pulled back to cock the gun, there's an involuntary reaction with your thumb when it moves. With your index finger, it moves. And so maybe that's the way out of it. And to say, I didn't intend to, I listened to my professionals, and maybe they'll just have sympathy for him and believe him. But if he is found guilty, I do think he's going to be sent to incarceration, because how do you not? Here's this big Hollywood actor, and you're going to give him no prison time when this young armorer is found guilty and given the maximum 18 months. How do you give her 18 months and you give Alec Baldwin nothing?
Yeah, I agree with that. I do think this is why I always tell my clients not to speak with the press, not to go on record. I think the best evidence the prosecution has is Baldwin's ill-advised statements. I think he went on ABC or some other outlet and said exactly that he hadn't pulled the trigger, and that's why there was an adjournment. At first the prosecution dropped the charges, and then they came back several months later and brought charges again, because they've been doing this forensic investigation. They had the FBI look. And the FBI, I believe it was the FBI, but the forensics came back that yes, in fact, the trigger was pulled. So I think that's probably the worst evidence. And I agree. The judge did preclude that evidence that he was a producer and all that. But I think that there'll still be room for the prosecution to put in some evidence that this was, kind of very low budget, and they were cutting corners, exactly as you said, and this armorer didn't know what she was doing, and therefore he shouldn't have relied, I think essentially is the theory, on these statements that there was no live round. I do have to say the defense lawyer, Alex Spiro, who, he basically asked the question, how is it possible that there was a live bullet? And that is the question. Like, that is impossible to comprehend how that could have happened on the set of a movie. I mean, he said, why did a real bullet get loaded into a prop movie gun? So I think that's just classic deflection, right? When you have a defense lawyer who is just looking to create noise and smoke and all that. Sorry for I didn't mean that to be a pun. And, to get the jury thinking about other questions, perhaps other than the one that's really in front of them. But this, to me, when I think this is just a very, very aggressive prosecution. And, it's hard. It's hard to see. We'll see how the proof comes in, but hard to see, 12 jurors agreeing that
I agree.
manslaughter.
I think law enforcement, I think they destroyed the gun by accident too. I mean,
Yeah,
there's all kinds of problems in that case. And jurors hold that against the prosecution, beyond a reasonable doubt. All four of us here have been prosecutors, right? You're still a prosecutor, Dave. So, but it's every time I tried a case and the judge charges the jury and they would read beyond a reasonable doubt, I'd get a pit in my stomach and think, oh my God, how can anyone ever, it's a really high burden. It's really, really, really hard. And 12 people have to agree unanimously on that. I mean, when was the last time 12 people could agree on what to eat for dinner, let alone whether to do this extraordinary stretch of holding him responsible. But yeah, as you said, he lied about a few things. And so they're going to hold that against him. But I think this is a really tough case. And any chance they had, I really think the judge kind of, I don't want to say gutted it, but taking out you were responsible to make sure that there was safety on set as one of the producers. I think by that's what got me over the hurdle the first time, thinking, okay, I could see that being responsible, but just as an actor, I don't see, I think this is going to be a fairly quick acquittal.
Yeah, it will be a fast trial. I think it's basically they think that it'll be in front of the jury in a week or so. I think by the 19th. So we're not going to have to be sitting on the edge of our seat for too long. But it is interesting. Just to go back, I'm looking at the opening statement from the prosecutor, and she really is hammering, that he didn't use basic gun safety rules. That this basically you don't point a gun at someone in a workplace, which ignores the real world. This wasn't it's not like an office setting. They were on a movie set where actors point guns at each other all the time. So I think the jury is gonna have this properly contextualized for them, and we'll see it.
I've seen some reports that said that Halyna Hutchins, the victim, had asked that Alec Baldwin point and press the trigger and point and shoot towards her. Now, I don't have any confirmation, but if that's true, that's going to really help Baldwin. Even if she said, point the gun at me, that's also helps Baldwin. And as you said, Don, you're right. This is not a typical office. This is a movie set where guns are used as props all the time. And actors never think that when they're told a gun is clean and cold, that it actually would have live bullets in it. And the reason why it had live bullets is because of the negligence of Hannah Gutierrez Reed, the young armor who was unqualified and was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter herself, and the first assistant director, Dave Halls, who pled guilty. And the defense wanted Hannah Gutierrez Reed to testify. They want to put it on her, but she's not. She's taking the fifth. So she's not going to be available. Interestingly,
the judge actually had a ruling in favor of the prosecution, right, where the defense wanted to put in some of the prosecutor's arguments in that trial, the armorer's trial, right, where they basically were saying they put it all on her, and the defense wanted to use that against the government, and the judge said that they couldn't do that. But there is some dissonance right there in trying to in holding her responsible, and the assistant director who also pled guilty, and Alec Baldwin.
Multiple things could be right at the same time. They could all be guilty, and just because Hannah Gutierrez Reed and Dave Halls were also guilty doesn't mean it clears Alec Baldwin. But that's the implication that Baldwin's lawyers want to make.
Correct.
Well, but also, what does it say to the public that, these two, one pled guilty, one was found guilty, and this guy's acquitted? The most famous of them all is acquitted.
Yeah, exactly. There's that pressure too. The reason I don't think he should take the stand is, I think, first of all, they'll make him out to be a liar, right? You said you didn't pull the trigger and you did. But second of all, he has a temper. He's known in New York to have gotten into it with some people, with reporters, et cetera. I think you could get under his skin fairly fairly easily. And I don't think that bodes well for him in a case like this. But what do I know? I'm just not sure I would put him on the stand.
Yeah, it's a fair point. And we don't know, what other quote unquote prior bad acts that the prosecution would try and put in. I mean, there are incidents of him, I think, hitting reporters and
exactly.
I could be wrong, right? But going that far, and could that be used to prove up this case in some way? Just recklessness or hot-headedness. I haven't seen those motion papers. I haven't seen discussion, but that would be obviously, if that came in, it could, as much as Baldwin, has had a long history, of acting and is beloved by some, he's quite the opposite in other circles, and never know how he would go over with his jury.
Yeah, I think he was arrested in New York, if I remember correctly, over like a parking dispute or something. It was a stupid parking spot dispute, and he punched someone in the face and got arrested. I mean, so you can imagine, even if you can't bring that out, you can imagine how easily you could get under his skin, especially something like this, where he is so emotional by all accounts. I think Spyro, in his defense, said he had shocking grief. I think that's what he said in his opening. So this is going to be an extremely emotional time for him. And I could just imagine a scenario where if he were to testify, it would be hard for him to contain his emotion. Yeah. So this is a good time to take a break. MissTrial has amazing pro-democracy sponsors, and so we're going to take our first ad break. This summer, do you want to enjoy hemp products but don't know where to get them? Are you in a state where it's not legally accessible? Had enough of overpriced dispensaries? Whether you're lounging under the sun or exploring new adventures, Via's premium hemp products are your perfect companion. They're farmed and crafted with care in the United States and trusted by over 500,000 customers. Via Hemp has a product for everyone. Their wide range of premium gummies covering all effects and strength ranges has you covered. Whether you're looking to set the mood in the bedroom or chill out after a long day, lab tested and certified Via Hemp's products are sourced from the finest hemp for your peace of mind. Via is well known for their premium THCA flower grown indoors in state-of-the-art facilities and harvested at peak THCA levels to emphasize a natural aroma and flavor. The THCA flower strains are grown with care and rigorously tested to ensure the highest quality, free from harsh pesticides or nasty chemicals. And the best part? Via legally ships to all 50 states in discreet packaging directly to your door with worry-free guarantee. No medical card is required. So if you're 21 or over, check out our link in Via's website and in our description, and you can get 15% off. So you will, I think, like it if you try it, if this is your jam. Unlock the power of nature this summer with Via's organic and vegan hemp extracts, perfect for relaxation and rejuvenation. Via is the only lifestyle hemp brand. They use compounds found in hemp along with active plant extracts to create products, each with a specific effect in mind. Again, whether you want to get better sleep, ease anxiety, enhance your mood, or just feel a little something something, Via is for you. They also have 0 THC products. If THC isn't for you, you can still take advantage of their CBD line. So their products range from 0 to 100 milligrams of THC, and these guys have you covered. They're an industry leader, over 500,000 customers served, made in the USA, and award-winning. They have quality ingredients, and they're affordable and accessible. So if you're 21 or over, check out the link in our description to Via. Use the code MissTrial, that's with 2 S's, MissTrial, to receive 15% off after you purchased. They will ask you where you heard about them, and if you support our show, tell them we sent to you. Again, put MissTrial, MissTrial, to receive 15% off. Okay, we're back. We're back with David Aronberg, and we're so thrilled that you're here with us, and you're here to talk about just politics and law and where they intersect and true crime, because you are all of those things with your amazing show on the MeidasTouch network called True Crime MTN. And I don't know how you have enough hours in the day, given that you're also the Palm Beach State Attorney. But we so appreciate that you are taking the time to come and be on our new show, MissTrial, that we're thrilled to be able to do at least once a week. So, which is what we've been doing.
Dave is also a newlywed, by the way. So I'm
Wow.
Congrats.
Yes.
I don't know where he finds the time.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm
Newlywed.
sure your bride is happy that are you going on your honeymoon soon?
Yes. In just a couple of days, be heading off to my honeymoon. I'm a lucky guy, and my bride also does videos for True Crime MTN. She's part of a show, so it's a family business.
Wow. What's her show about?
It's called Legal Psych. She does it with a psychiatrist, and they talk about the psychology of some of these criminal cases. And most of these cases, the defendants just are bonkers. Now, it doesn't mean you're not guilty by reason of insanity, but normal people don't do the things that these high-profile defendants often do.
That's amazing. Well, yeah, I'd love to talk to her. I find that so fascinating. Yeah. Is she a lawyer, or is she a?
Fortunately, she is not. There's only so many lawyers you can have inside one household. She's a realtor, and we're just very excited, and I hope that she can meet all of you guys. She's already met Danya, and she needs to meet the rest of the MissTrial family.
Yeah, it would be fantastic. Awesome. Well, congratulations. We wish you well and hope you have the best ever. Can you tell us where you're going on your honeymoon?
Yeah, we're going to go to Budapest and then to Athens and then taking a cruise to the Greek islands. So it should be a lot of fun.
Wow, that sounds amazing. Can we pivot to this Karen Read case?
Sure.
Have you been covering this on your channel?
Oh yeah, and I've got the scars to show it. There's a lot of passion out there for those who support Karen Read. They don't like to hear that there are people out there who think, yeah, she's guilty.
Well, why don't can you set the stage and tell everybody what the case is about and what happened?
Karen Read had a relationship with a police officer named John O'Keefe, and the police officer ended up dead when they got in a fight one night. They were drinking, and Karen Read backed up and allegedly hit him in a snowy night, late at night, and killed him. And then
with her car,
right, backed up with her car, and then she drove off. And then they found him in the snow hours later. And the defense is saying, at first, the defense said that it was an accident, which actually I believe it was an accident. But then the defense changed into a massive conspiracy involving the people inside the house. See, they were out on a night of drinking, and they went to this after party. At least she was dropping John off at the after party and then drove away. The conspiracy theory says that John went in the house, and there are other cops there from different agencies, and they had a massive fight, and the cops killed John and then threw him out in the front lawn, because that's what you do when you kill someone, right? You, instead of claiming self-defense, instead of hiding the body, you just throw them out in your front lawn. And then they proceeded to frame Karen Read with John's murder. And
but why would his friends, fellow police officers, fellow partiers, why would they kill him?
Apparently there was animosity between at least one member of the house and the victim. And so they're saying this was an intentional killing, even though everyone in the house took the stand. So when you're saying there's this conspiracy of silence, well, they all took the stand under oath. But you know who did not take the stand? Karen Read. So the people who think she's just a victim of this massive conspiracy and everyone is clammed up saying the same story and not saying anything, well, they all took the stand under oath. Karen Read would talk to reporters every day walking to the courtroom, and she was very free in talking to reporters. I've never seen that. Danya, as a defense lawyer, would go crazy if her client was yapping to reporters on the way.
You've never seen it except Donald Trump, but go on. I digress.
Right.
Alec Baldwin, as we just talked about.
Right.
Exactly. And then in the courtroom, she refused to take the stand. Now, whenever I mention this on podcasts or in interviews, The person I'm on with who's a defense lawyer or people in the community say, how dare you? How dare you try to impugn her constitutional right to stay quiet? Well, you know what? This is not a courtroom. In a courtroom, as a prosecutor, I cannot say she stayed quiet. Why? That would be an immediate mistrial, no pun intended. But on a podcast, I can ask the question of, if this really is a conspiracy, why did everyone else take the stand? And why did the one person who is talking to the world refuse to take the stand in the trial? It's because the conspiracy is so outlandish that, to me, it shows that she's guilty because it's a binary choice. The choice is either she killed him with the car or you have this massive conspiracy. I think the defense should have just downplayed the conspiracy and focused on reasonable doubt. And there was some reasonable doubt here. The cops really screwed up. They have this lead investigator named Proctor who sent the most offensive text messages and emails about Karen Read, about her appearance, just disgusting, vulgar stuff that, pissed off the jury. Also, police, they collected evidence using red Solo cups and Stop and Shop bags and a leaf blower. And so there's a lot of potential contamination. And then there's the question of the broken tail light, whether it really was shattered or whether it was planted evidence. There's no proof that the evidence was planted. And there's no proof of the conspiracy, but there is some reasonable doubt when it comes to the misconduct of police. And because of that, I think you can see why the public is so worked up. And just one final point. In the end, the jury came back with a mistrial, a hung jury, but now it's being said that they really did vote unanimously to acquit on the murder charge. I think they should never have charged murder. That's an overcharge. But on the manslaughter charge, apparently it was close to a conviction. And then there was a third charge of leaving the scene of an accident, which, according to reports, that also led to a unanimous acquittal, although I don't believe that. I don't know how you find her guilty of manslaughter and not guilty of leaving the scene of an accident. So we'll see. These are all reports that we're hearing. Nothing has been confirmed.
But if it was an accident, what's the prosecution theory? You said it was you thought it was an accident, that she didn't intentionally take the car and run him over. What's the theory, the prosecution theory of why she'd be guilty?
It's because she got blasted at the bar. She drank to oblivion and then drove and then put herself in such a reckless situation that it falls under the manslaughter law. Also, there were some really terrible voicemails that Karen Read left for John that early morning, right after she peeled out and drove back. She left him these most hateful messages, 50 voicemails saying how much she hates him and just vile messages. Now, that to me shows she did not think he was dead. Why would you leave all those messages if you thought he was dead? But when she came back to the scene, she was the only one who could find John buried in the snow. And that's because she knew she had hit him and knew where his body was. No one else could find him except for her. And she also lied. She said she fell asleep that night when she got home and didn't wake up until the next morning. Well, it turns out she was up all night leaving hate messages on his voicemail.
So what happens? Apparently, the judge said they came to an impasse. They ruled it to be a hung jury or a mistrial, same thing. And now at least 4 jurors have come forward saying that it's not. We thought we had to come to a unanimous verdict on all the counts, but we did come to a unanimous acquittal on 2 of the counts. What happens next?
The Supreme Court has ruled that it's still a mistrial. You don't get to have a redo. You don't get an acquittal after a mistrial when the defense lawyers should have asked to poll the jury or to at least find out more information or at least to confirm whether or not there was an acquittal, because there was no signed, sealed, delivered jury form that said we are unanimous on counts 1 and 3. So even if it's true, we don't know if this is true, but even if it's true that the jury at some point found that she was not guilty unanimously on the murder count, for example, well, unless that's signed, sealed, and delivered, unless the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, that's not an acquittal. You don't get to go back and take a revote. No, there was a mistrial because the jury said we can't reach a verdict and we are hung. And we are hopelessly hung. And they got the Allen charge, which is the charge when the judge tells the jurors to go back in and get more serious about your verdict. But in the end, there's no remedy for changing the verdict. It's a mistrial, and now it's up to the prosecution to try it again.
Why has this case caught public attention so much?
I mean, is it my question, Karen? Just going to be a question. Yeah.
I think it involves an attractive, seemingly likable woman who has resources to hire the best lawyers, PR people. There's a blogger out there named Turtle Boy who has taken up her cause, and it exploits.
He's got himself in trouble, right? Isn't he?
Oh, yeah, he's now facing felony charges of obstruction and trying to tamper with witnesses. But I think it also plays into the historical feelings of corruption by the local police, that in that community of Canton, Massachusetts, there seems to be that there's an old boys club where police look after each other and there's corruption. And so it feeds into that, especially when you saw the disgusting messages from the lead investigator, who also did not ever go into the home. He didn't go into the home to question any of the witnesses there. And there's no evidence that John actually went into the home. He looks like he died right there outside the home when Karen Reed hit him. But the investigator didn't even go inside their home because, according to his own messages, he wanted to make sure that, the people inside the home, were protected. And I'm paraphrasing, but it seemed like he had bias. And so it feeds into feelings that the police are corrupt and they're biased here and they protect their own. And you have this sympathetic victim who really isn't so sympathetic because she's not the victim. She's the defendant here who left awful messages, who lied about what she was doing that night. And in the end, inside John's clothing were found microscopic pieces of Karen Reed's taillight. How did that end up there? Was everything planted? No.
That was the theory, right? Then there was hair on the taillight, and that was planted. I agree with you. I think it's this whole conspiracy theory, this alternate universe that people love to construct, and that, old boys network. And it harkens back a little bit to the O.J. Simpson trial with Mark Furman. Remember that vile, racist detective? And when that stuff came out, that was a turning point. And so the jury must have hated it. But on the other hand, how did the jury not hate? I assume they heard those 50 messages that she left to him, right? I would think that would sway them in the other direction. Maybe that's why they were unable to reach a verdict. They just hated everyone all around. The crazy story. Do you think they'll retry? Do you have any word from the prosecution? They always say, we're ready to retry this, but I don't know if you've heard anything a little more clear than that.
They said what you said, Danya. Oh, we're going to retry this thing, but I think if they really believe that the verdict was 12-0 against count one, which was second-degree murder, that they won't retry that count. And I think the defense lawyers know that they cannot get an acquittal on that count based on conversations that happen in the jury box. No, excuse me, in the jury room. So I think what this is a play in the court of public opinion to pressure prosecutors not to refile the second-degree murder charges next time. On the third count about leaving the scene of an accident, I don't understand that, because if you're going to find her guilty of manslaughter, that means you believe that Karen Reed hit John O'Keefe, right? So how do you not say leaving the scene? That's why I'm not so sure that really was unanimous. But also, you can't just say, well, one moment in time we were unanimous. Until it's finalized, people's opinions can change. There's horse trading that goes on. And who knows what the final verdict would be. You don't get to do like Trump likes to do. Stop the count. As soon as I'm ahead, we're going to stop the count. That's not how it works in the law.
I thought perhaps it was because if she was so drunk and so obliterated, maybe she didn't realize she hit him. And so to leave the scene, you have to know that you hit someone and then leave, right? Isn't that a possibility that maybe she was so drunk she didn't even know?
You know what? That may be the answer. That's a good point. At 5 a.m., she called a friend of hers and she said, John is dead. How did she know that? Why would she say that? Because she knew she had hit him. And she didn't think, I think, when she hit him that he was dead. I think she thought maybe she sideswiped him, or she's going to show him. Maybe she, knocked him down. But at 5 a.m., she had an inkling when he didn't come home that he was dead.
Sometimes if you can talk, Dave, about when there is a mistrial, hung jury in a case, sometimes it results in no further prosecution. Sometimes they try the case again, and other times defendants take a plea. I mean, what's the likelihood that she might say, you know what, I don't know if I want to roll the dice again.
It's a good point, especially because her lawyers, who were excellent, her criminal defense lawyers, cost a lot of money, and she's going to have to pay them again to go a second time around. So maybe that's a possibility. But because this is such a binary choice, either it's a massive conspiracy or she hit him. and she's going all the way in with a massive conspiracy. For her to say now, yeah, I'm going to plead guilty, I really did hit him. That whole thing about the conspiracy, implanted DNA, implanted hair, implanted straw, implanted taillight, we just made that up. I think she goes and rolls the dice again, especially because she and her supporters seem to believe that this is an easy case, that this would be a quick acquittal. That's why I think it took them all by surprise. And some of them still come on my YouTube channel, True Crime MTN, and they write me, you were wrong. You were wrong. I'm like, no, I was right. The jury, it seemed like it was 9-3 in favor of the manslaughter conviction. You're the ones who were wrong when you said it was be an easy acquittal. But the jury, which paid attention to the evidence, did their jobs, and I think they're going to convict her the next time around, not of murder, but of manslaughter.
All right. Before we turn to our last and final thing I want to talk to you about, which involves Donald Trump, Mar-a-Lago, in that case, because it's in your home state of Florida. So maybe you could give us some insight into what the heck is going on down there. Before we turn to that, we're going to turn to our second ad break. Let's face it, after a night having too many drinks, I don't bounce back the way I used to, for sure. So I either have to make a choice. I can either have fun with my friends or have a good next day. That is until I found Z-Biotics. This is a probiotic invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. I don't want to look puffy. I'm on TV all the time, or I'm doing a podcast. There's no reason to have that puffy feeling or those puffy eyes. So here's how it works. When you drink alcohol, it gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. And this byproduct is not dehydration. That's not the only thing that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. And so this is a proactive solution that wards off feeling miserable the next day instead of a reactive approach like drinking electrolytes or eating greasy food, also something I don't like to do anymore. So every time I have Z-Biotics before I drink, I notice a difference the next day. Even after a night out, I can confidently plan on being able to appear on television without worry. So admittedly, I was a little skeptical at first, but then when I was hanging out with a friend and having a couple glasses of wine, I gave it a shot. But now that I've tried it a few times, I know it works. And so I absolutely love Z-Biotics. And it's something that I will use if I'm going out to dinner and having a couple glasses of wine. So depends on whether you're on vacation, or shouldn't depend on whether you're on vacation, going to a wedding, birthday party, reunion, dinner, like me, anything. Get the most out of your evenings out and join the movement of people like me who are choosing Z-Biotics for smoother mornings and unstoppable success. So enhance your mornings with Z-Biotics. Go to zbiotics.com/MissTrial to get 15% off your first order when you use MissTrial at checkout. That's with 2 S's, by the way, MISS trial, no space. Z-Biotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee. If you're not satisfied for any reason, they'll just refund your money, no questions asked. So remember to head to zbiotics.com/MISSTRIAL and use the code MissTrial at checkout for 15% off. Thank you so much, Z-Biotics, for sponsoring this episode. Okay, we're back. David, Judge Eileen Cannon randomly got the case, the Mar-a-Lago documents case, down in Florida. And now it's been looking all along, in my opinion, that she's trying to tank the case on behalf of Donald Trump. She's bending over backwards to do things that are outside, I would say are outside what I recognize to be things that I've ever seen judges do, and outside the bounds of really what's legally required, to the point where it seems like she's bending over backwards for him. And now, of course, the United States Supreme Court in their immunity decision has given her several gifts, including the dissent where Judge Thomas basically, even though this question wasn't before them in this case, basically gave her a roadmap on how to rule that Jack Smith, the special counsel, was not is unlawful, essentially, was unlawfully appointed, which coincidentally happens to be an issue before her that she's considering, that she invited amicus briefs and amicus oral arguments. Again, something I've never seen before in the district court level. So to me, that didn't seem like a coincidence. And just really, I have to ask you the legal question: what the heck is going on in your state?
Donald Trump may be the luckiest person on earth, right? I mean, it was random which judge he got in the Southern District of Florida. Jack Smith chose the West Palm Beach division, which did narrow it down just to the judges in that division. But then Trump got Aileen Cannon, who had already been controversial by getting involved in the special master issue a year before and getting repudiated by the 11th Circuit, getting thrown off the case by the 11th Circuit. And now she's back on, and she's been slow walking this case. And her rulings have generally inured to the benefit of Donald Trump. And I am not, as a sitting prosecutor, going to call a federal judge corrupt. I'm not going to do that. I will say she's inexperienced, and she's by herself in the Fort Pierce satellite courthouse, where there's no adult supervision. There are no senior judges there to help guide her. She's just there alone with her law clerks, who will come and go. And so she has indulged Trump's every request for every hearing and every issue, no matter how ludicrous, and even allowed, as you said, amicus oral arguments where outsiders who have nothing to do with the case come in and argue on behalf of an issue like the constitutionality of the special counsel. So will Justice Thomas's dissenting or his concurring opinion, where he talks about that the special counsel is unconstitutional in this case, will that persuade Judge Cannon to rule that way? Well, it wouldn't any other judge, but Judge Cannon, perhaps. I will say this, although I'm not going to say that she's compromised or anything, but I will say this: when you continue as a referee to give every call for one team and not the other, you can understand why a lot of people are thinking that the ref is biased.
You're right. I misspoke. It was a concurrence, not a dissent, that Justice Thomas wrote. So what's she going to do? What's going to happen now? Now, what does that immunity decision do to that case?
The immunity decision shouldn't affect the case because Trump's actions were after he was president. He is allowed to handle and possess those classified documents as president, just as he's allowed to use Air Force One when he's president. But once you're out of office, you don't get to keep government property, just like you don't get to keep Air Force One. And if he kept Air Force One as his own at Mar-a-Lago, he'd be arrested for it, just as he was charged for possessing those documents in the Mar-a-Lago documents case. This is the strongest case against Donald Trump. The immunity decision should not have any effect, but because it's Judge Cannon, it will, I think, slow it down even further. At some point, Judge Cannon is going to have to make a final order that's going to either rule for Jack Smith on this or to rule for Donald Trump. And if she rules for Donald Trump, which a lot of people think she will, that's when Jack Smith will take this up to the 11th Circuit, and that's when he will ask for her recusal from the case.
Yeah, won't that be too late, though, Dave? I mean, you know.
I think well, it will be after, it will almost certainly be after the election, right? But
for sure.
And then these cases all go away if he wins.
These cases all go, the federal cases all go away if he wins. But this case was never going to be heard before the election. Once Judge Cannon got the case, it was going to be delay after delay. So this case, which is the strongest against Trump, was always the least likely to happen anytime soon once Judge Cannon got the matter.
I think one of the most dangerous parts about the immunity decision, though. Sorry. Go ahead, Danya.
Oh, no, I was just going to, just a little color on I think the immunity decision was a disaster, and it was poorly reasoned, if you even want to dignify it by saying it was reasoned. But in uniquely, I think in the Mar-a-Lago case, the one way I think that it could affect the case is in terms of what evidence is allowed to be presented. We talked about this last week, that the court decided that evidence of official acts can't even be used. And here, there are some allegations about official acts that that the then president undertook, but here the defense has argued that those official acts were helpful, were exculpatory, and so it'll be interesting. Are they allowed to put that in? Is it only the prosecution who can't put in evidence? So in some way, I think just in this case, unlike the others that are pending, I don't think the immunity decision is at all helpful, and in some ways, perhaps quite the opposite.
Well, let's play this out though again, and I'm putting on the hat of I'm Judge Cannon, and so I want to do everything I can to bend over backwards for Donald Trump. I am not a sitting elected official, so I can say that I think she is in the tank for him. And it was hard for me to do that at first, just because she's a federal judge, and it's very difficult for me just as a lawyer to say anything negative about any judges. But I have no other. I can't see any other possibility given her various rulings. But so putting on that hat, it feels slightly like she could say, okay, that part of the decision that says you can't even use evidence. Okay. And in the opinion, Chief Justice Roberts spelled out what are the things that are within the core responsibility or the core duties of the presidency. And one of the things they said was intelligence gathering, right? And to me, that felt like they were specifically talking about possessing classified documents or possessing national defense information, which is what he's accused of possessing, right? It doesn't matter that they're classified. So let's say he was allowed to possess them. If he was allowed to possess them, and you're not allowed to use evidence, right? You're not allowed to use evidence even to investigate or prosecute a case. Doesn't that then make it so that the search warrant is invalid? They never could have had probable cause to do the search warrant to begin with. And so if they suppress all of that, how do you prove the case?
I mean, you do it because the timeline, it all started after he left office. That's when the obstruction, that's when the refusal to give it back began. He was no longer president at the time that this all happened.
Right. The claim is that the charges are of unlawfully retaining documents. So it's the retention, and that they can put in that evidence that he had those in his possession on his property.
I hope you're right. I just worry. I worry that she's going to look for any opportunity to suppress.
Well, this, if I can just bring it back to the politics of this, I mean, this goes back to why it's so important who people vote for president, because it is solely within their discretion to, the senators suggest, judges, but, the president appoints them. I mean, it's just ridiculous. The quality of the people that are being, and this was Mitch McConnell's number. He said it right out loud. He said, we are going to pack the court. And I'm not talking about the Supreme Court, even though Trump got more appointments than I think any other president ever. But they filled so many seats on the lower federal court benches. And now we're seeing the byproduct of that, and why it is so important who the president is and who your senators are too, quite frankly.
It's so true. And I hope there's no open federal district court or appellate court judge positions. And Biden has to fill every single one of them. I mean, because you're right. This is so important. And this is all about going out to vote in November. And that's going to make all the difference in the world. So, David, one last question. Tell us about Danya in college.
I see our time is up here. We're at the 1 hour mark. Maybe we'll have you back.
I mean, everyone liked Danya. She was well liked. She was very smart, and she liked the Far Side. Remember that comic strip? I remember she had a Far Side calendar on her desk, and sometimes you'd go to her room and she'd listen to some good tunes. There's really no scandal. That's why she's been such a success. There are no skeletons in that closet. At least we were so nerdy at Harvard. We didn't have enough time or the wherewithal to have too much fun.
Spoken like the politician you are. Well, I think when I said at the beginning that I was nerdy and you denied it, but then you just told everyone about my Far Side calendar, I think you supported everything I had to say.
You thought I forgot about that, right?
I forgot about that. That is surprising and embarrassing.
That's a good memory.
That is a great memory. All right. Note to self, have David back on the pod. Great. Yes. Great having us here, being here with us.
You.
And we really appreciate it. Have the best time on your honeymoon. And thank you so much for joining us. And we've reached the end of another MissTrial, another episode. And join us every week at least, and sometimes more often whenever there's something important that we can bring to you. We will be here, and we will be here telling you what's going on and what it all means. So thank you so much, and see you next time.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up for the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.